The restaurant was the kind of place people chose for first dates when they wanted to impress someone. Soft candlelight, polished glasses, quiet music floating through the air like a promise that the night might become something unforgettable. For me, it was unforgettable for all the wrong reasons. I sat across from Daniel, forcing polite smiles while every minute stretched longer than the last. He had spent the first 20 minutes talking about his ex-girlfriend, the next 15 bragging about his car, and now he was halfway through a story about how most women just don't appreciate a successful man. I nodded weakly, staring at the flickering candle between us. This was supposed to be my first real date in nearly 2 years. After my divorce, my friends had begged me to get back out there. They said I needed to remember what it felt like to be wanted again, to laugh again, to believe life could still surprise me in good ways. So when Daniel matched with me online and seemed charming in his messages, I agreed to dinner. But now, sitting in that velvet booth while he mocked the waiter for bringing sparkling water instead of still, I wanted to disappear. I had spent 2 years rebuilding myself after my marriage ended, learning how to sleep alone, how to make decisions alone, how to smile without pretending. I had finally convinced myself I was ready to trust someone again. And this was what waited for me. A man who interrupted every sentence I spoke. A man who checked out other women while I was talking. A man who snapped his fingers at the staff like they were beneath him. The worst part wasn't even his arrogance. It was the sinking realization that maybe this was all I could expect now. Maybe all the warmth, tenderness, and kindness I once believed in belonged to another chapter of my life. Daniel leaned back in his chair and smirked. "So," he said, swirling his wine, "you're a school teacher? That must be cute." Not exactly ambitious, but cute. I felt my cheeks burn. For a second, I forgot how to speak. Teaching wasn't cute. It was the work I loved. It was the reason I woke up early every morning, the reason I spent my own money on classroom supplies, the reason I stayed late helping kids who needed encouragement. But in Daniel's eyes, it was just something small. I glanced down at my plate, suddenly embarrassed for reasons I didn't even understand. Then a waitress approached our table. She was maybe in her early 20s, with tired eyes but a warm expression. She set down our entries carefully, then looked at me for half a second longer than necessary. I gave her a faint smile. Daniel barely acknowledged her. Finally, he muttered, "I was wondering if anyone worked here." The waitress didn't react. She simply nodded and turned away. A few minutes later, while Daniel was in the middle of boasting about a business deal, she returned to refill our glasses. As she leaned toward me, her voice dropped so softly only I could hear it. "You don't have to stay." I blinked. For a moment, I thought I had imagined it. She met my eyes briefly, then moved to the next table as if nothing had happened. But my heart started pounding. "You don't have to stay." For simple words. No one had said anything like that to me in years. During my marriage, I had stayed through endless dinners where my husband belittled me in public. I stayed through holidays where he criticized everything I did. I stayed through conversations that left me feeling invisible. I stayed because I thought leaving meant failure. And now, on this miserable date, a stranger had looked at me and quietly reminded me that leaving was an option. Daniel kept talking, unaware that something inside me had shifted. It wasn't just about the date anymore. It was about every moment I had silenced my discomfort to protect someone else's ego. Every moment I had chosen politeness over peace. Every moment I had convinced myself enduring unhappiness was somehow the nice thing to do. The waitress came back a few minutes later and placed the check on the table. Daniel glanced at it and laughed. "Wow," he said. "Prices like these? I hope this place is worth it." Then he slid the check toward me. "You don't mind splitting, right? I mean, equality and all that." I stared at him. Not because he wanted to split the bill, that was fine. But because of the smug grin on his face, the assumption that after insulting me all night, I should still politely play along. And suddenly, I was tired. Tired in the deepest sense of the word. Tired of swallowing hurt. Tired of making excuses for rude people. Tired of acting grateful for scraps of decency. I looked down at the check, then back at him. No, I said calmly. I don't mind splitting. He shrugged. Great. I reached into my purse, pulled out enough cash to cover my meal and tip, and placed it on the table. Then I stood. Daniel frowned. Where are you going? I picked up my coat. Home. He gave a short laugh. Seriously? Because I asked to split the bill. I shook my head. No. Because you've been rude to me, rude to the staff, and rude to everyone in this room since I got here. His face hardened. Wow. Sensitive much? For the first time all night, I smiled, a real smile. No, I said. Just unsettling. Then I turned and walked away. My legs trembled as I crossed the restaurant. Part of me expected him to yell, to insult me, to make me regret speaking up. But he didn't. The waitress was standing near the entrance. As I passed, she gave me the gentlest smile. Good for you, she whispered. And before I knew it, tears filled my eyes. Not because of Daniel. Because of her. Because a stranger saw what I was too ashamed to admit, that I was miserable, and gave me the smallest push toward dignity. Outside, the night air was cold against my face. I stood on the sidewalk, breathing deeply, trying to steady myself. Then I heard footsteps behind me. I turned to see the waitress walking out with her coat on, clearly heading home. She smiled when she saw me. Hey, she said. You okay? I laughed softly through my tears. Yeah. Actually, yeah. She nodded like she understood exactly what that meant. I'm Mia, she said. Rachel. We stood under the glow of the streetlight for a moment, two strangers sharing the quiet aftermath of a painful evening. Then I asked the question burning in my mind. How did you know? She tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. Because 3 years ago, I was on a date just like that. I was miserable, but I kept smiling because I didn't want to seem rude. She paused. An older waitress looked at me and said the same thing I said to you tonight. You don't have to stay, I murmured. She smiled. Yep. I felt chills. That changed everything for me, she said. So now, whenever I see another woman trapped in that same place, I try to pass it on. There was no drama in the way she said it. No expectation of gratitude. Just quiet kindness. The kind that asks for nothing but changes everything. I swallowed hard. You have no idea what that meant to me. She shrugged lightly. Maybe I do. We talked for another 10 minutes on that sidewalk. She told me she was finishing nursing school. I told her I taught 4th grade. She laughed when I admitted I almost cancelled the date but forced myself to go because I was afraid of becoming the woman who gave up. Then she said something I'll never forget. Leaving the wrong table isn't giving up. It's making room for the right things. I repeated the word silently. Leaving the wrong table isn't giving up. For so long, I had thought strength meant enduring. Mia reminded me that strength can also mean walking away. That night, I went home feeling lighter than I had in months. Not because I had escaped a bad date. Because I had reclaimed something I didn't realize I'd lost, my own permission to choose peace. A week later, I returned to the restaurant. Mia looked surprised when she saw me. I handed her a small gift bag with a thank you card and supplies for nursing school, pens, notebooks, gift cards for coffee. She looked at me like I'd handed her the world. You didn't have to do this, she said. I know, I replied. But kindness like yours deserves to be returned. She hugged me tightly. Months passed, but I never forgot that night. And something unexpected happened. The kindness Mia showed me changed the way I moved through the world. I became more honest about my own boundaries. I stopped saying yes when I meant no. I noticed when others looked uncomfortable, unseen, or stuck. One afternoon, a parent at school stayed after class, apologizing repeatedly for being difficult while asking for help for her son. She looked nervous, like she expected annoyance. Instead, I smiled and said, "You don't have to apologize for asking for support." The relief in her face reminded me of my own. That was when I understood what Mia had really given me. Not just courage. A chain reaction. One quiet act of compassion had reached into my life and changed how I treated others. Years later, when people ask me when my life changed after my divorce, they expect me to mention some grand moment, a new relationship, a career achievement, some dramatic turning point. But the truth is simpler. My life changed in a dimly lit restaurant when a tired waitress leaned close and whispered 4 words. "You don't have to stay." Because sometimes the greatest acts of love don't come from family or friends. Sometimes they come from strangers who see your pain and remind you of your worth. And sometimes the smallest kindness becomes the beginning of an entirely new life.